Hello, and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinelli, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching normally once a week. I skipped a week last week. I'll explain a bit more in the intro. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. Like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube, all of that good stuff. So I have a few introductory stuff that I want to get out of the way at the beginning of the episode. But if you don't care and you just want to skip straight to my Big Brother recap, timestamps will be in the description. This episode is going to be about weeks 5 and 6 because I skipped last week. So my apologies for that. If you don't care about week 5, feel free to just skip to my week 6 thoughts. However, I don't like skipping a week. So I do have things I want to say about week 5. Any other disclaimers? My background keeps changing. I don't know where I'm going to be recording, like background wise going forward. I'm still trying to figure it out. Right now I'm literally sitting on my floor in my bedroom along this blank wall. Just because I was recording on my sofa, then I recorded on my, it doesn't matter, okay? But the point is I know the background is kind of blank. Maybe I'll do something with it. If I decide this is where I want to record, maybe I won't. But the main reason I wanted to mention that I'm recording in a different spot is because I am recording upstairs and it is really hot. So if I'm extra sweaty this episode, I'm sorry. I think those are all the disclaimers I wanted to make. Oh, okay. One other disclaimer. My notes are on my phone this time. I normally like to handwrite notes, but I was watching a lot of these episodes like at night with my light off. And I didn't want to turn my light on to write my notes by hand, so I just wrote them in my notes app. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me just jump straight into Big Brother 28. It's been so long since I last talked about it, and yet not that long at all, you know? But so much happened so quickly in Big Brother that it genuinely feels like a million years ago since I talked about Haley's HOH. Like, Haley being HOH feels like a decade ago. There were some things that I wanted, literally one thing that I meant to mention in my week 4 recap and I forgot. At some point during the week, Melody's like, if I have to be the poster child. Oh wait, I have another disclaimer. I'm fostering kittens. If you hear them in the background, I have them in their playpen right now because I can't watch them while I'm recording this, but they might be meowing, so I'm sorry about that. Anyways, let me just jump back into Big Brother. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to say about week 4 that I forgot to mention in my week 4 recap is that at some point, Melody in the DR said something about being like a poster child for like the Haley Hate Club, and I wanted to say that I would join her in that club. In fact, I would buy the poster and hang it on my wall. It's funny though because Haley has kind of become. I don't like her. Like I still don't really care for her. She's just kind of like I don't really. She's just there for me now. Like now recording. Week 7 has already started. I'm recording this on Friday, so like HOH has been won. Nominations are happening as I'm recording this. The feeds are down, which is why I'm recording this. So like a lot has happened since, and of all the people in the house, like, do I want Haley there? No. Do I really have like? I just don't. I feel so indifferent towards Haley. I'm back to muting her every time she's on feeds. Not that I really stopped. Anyways, but my dislike for Haley is like so secondary. Like I just you know what it is there's like a different disdain I have towards somebody on Big Brother when they're in power versus when they're not, because I'm like right now Haley, like what is Haley gonna do? Like what is Haley gonna do? If Haley wins another HOH, will I dislike her as much as I did? Probably, but right now I'm like nobody gives a fuck about Haley. If Haley starts doing well again, I'm gonna be upset. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to anybody? Anyway, so week 5, the HOH going into week 5 was the wall comp. I really like how they did the wall comp this year. Like it was a lot less purely based off of like it seemed a lot more balanced, so it felt more endurance and it lasted longer than the last few have. And I was watching this on feeds when I recorded my week 4 recap. Not only had I already knew who nominees were, like I was already a few days into week 5 because that episode I recorded on Sunday. So like the week 5, I feel like anyways, but I haven't talked about it at all on the podcast. So let me just log back in. So the wall was on feeds and I was watching the wall. Angela fell first. I think she fell before feeds even came on. No, yeah, she definitely fell before Feeds even came on. The first few people to drop were not really surprising. Dee was the fifth person to drop, so if they had done the traditional, like, the first four to drop are have-nots, she would have missed the cutoff, but they didn't do it that way. I don't remember how they selected it, but it wasn't, like, the first four people to drop are have-nots for whatever reason. Towards the end, the final three, I believe, I know Yash was there towards the end, and then it was Kamu, Lala, and Drew, I think were the final three. And then Drew fell, and it was Kamu and Lala. Yash may have been in the final. No. Drew was in the top three. Yash was up there too, though. But I really didn't want Kamu to win. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast or I just tweeted it, but I'm always going to be rooting for a scenario where Kamu goes home. Like, even if he's the HOH somehow or he has the veto, I'm going to be rooting for some kind of twisted way that Kamu still goes home. That is my truth, and I stand by it. So, like, I really didn't want Kamu to win. Okay, I really don't like Kamu. And it was between Kamu and Lala and Feeds cut. And it was, like, so stressful. And I'm like, I hate that they do this. Like, I don't remember the wall for 27. I think Vince won, but I don't remember, like, the end game being as stressful. But, like, 26, it was, like, Quinn and Tucker, and that was, like, very intense because it's like, oh my God, who's going to win? And then Quinn got second place, and it was a whole thing. If you were there for Big Brother 26, you remember. So I was like, great, they're doing this again. We're going to come back. Kamu's going to be HOH. And when Feeds came back, Lala was crying. So I was like, oh my God, she lost. But she was crying out of relief and joy and, like, happiness. And I soon picked up on that. And I was so happy. I'm like, this is iconic. This is amazing. I think she's the oldest person to win the wall, the oldest women to win the wall. Truly, truly phenomenal. And the moment where it happened was, like, basically immediately when they cut Feeds. Kamu was, like, super comfortable saying he could go all night. Feeds cut. And then very soon after, he slipped. And it was, like, beautiful to watch. Obviously, they didn't show it on Feed, so I watched it in the edited show. But it was a great moment, and I was really happy for Lala. The first night that Lala was HOH, like, it was a bit stressful because I was like, I don't know who her nominees are going to be. Like, I know Taylor's going to have a big hand, to the point where Taylor, after Lala won HOH, like, literally said to the camera at some point, like, this is my HOH. Like, I knew that Taylor was going to have a big hand in it, but I didn't know what the nominees would look like. Lala really, her main target was Devins, but she didn't want to nominate Devins because he's good at comps. And, like, they were like, Taylor had mentioned that Jason said that Devins is the kind of competitor you need to get out after the blockbuster because he will save himself. And you know what's really interesting is, like, not that Devins isn't a good competitor, but, like, he hasn't, like, he's not, like, the best competitor ever. Like, I understand when Jason was in the game too, like, there were less comp wins, and Devins did dominate, like, the week that he was HOH, but he's only competed in one veto. Like, based off of the amount of competitions he's competed in, his win rate isn't, like, amazing. Like, and not to, like, knock Devins as a competitor, I just don't think he's, like, as big of a threat in an HOH and a veto as they were making. Like, the big thing is that he had a power, and they did say he probably has a power, so, like, it wouldn't have worked out for Lala probably, because Taylor probably would have been the diamond power veto victim in that scenario, probably. Who knows? But regardless, they settled off of Devins. But Lala's her main target, because she couldn't go for Devins, was Haley, but she wanted to backdoor Haley. And by backdoor, it's just the thing that they mean by backdooring people, which is just you don't put them up as the original nominee, because that's not backdooring. Like, backdooring is not a real mechanic anymore with the blockbuster, because the whole point of the backdoor is that you're removing their ability to save themselves, which you can no longer do. So it's not backdooring, but I understand what they mean. You just want to give them the least amount of opportunities to save themselves as possible. So she didn't want to nominate Haley originally. She didn't want to nominate Chuck. She and Taylor talked about it, and they were kind of just like, I don't like Chuck, but I kind of don't want to touch him, you know. And I understand that. I really do. I couldn't knock it because I'm like, I really do understand that. I simply was like, you should nominate Chuck, though. You should nominate Chuck. And so originally, I think the plan was Kamu, Drew, and Barrett with a Haley backdoor. And I didn't want this to happen because I'm like, I think you should put Haley up originally. And if you want somebody who can compete against Haley, you should put up Chuck. So I was like, just put up Chuck. She was talking about like good competitors. And I'm like, Chuck's also a good competitor, maybe allegedly, I don't know. But like, you know what I mean? I was like, I really wanted her to put up Chuck of all the people. And she did end up putting up Chuck, and she ended up putting up Haley originally. And the edited show made it seem like this was purely Kamu's move in a way that was really frustrating. And not to like jump ahead to week 6, but Kamu did go in week 6, hallelujah. And if there's one massive, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to Kamu leaving, but if there's one, I'm really excited to see Taylor's moves like not be credited to Kamu. And I don't think that's like Kamu's not editing the show, not blaming him for it, but I do think they liked Kamu so much, like the editors. And I'm glad to, because it really irritates me the way that Taylor's influence was like diluted in the edit for Lala's HOH and even Yash's HOH, which was week 6. Like she was barely in the edited show for the amount that she was like involved in the decisions and pushing off of like Yash's thought process and like how close of allies they are. But regardless, let me move forward. Kamu did, to his credit, argue why he shouldn't be on the block, and many people had been like arguing why Haley should go on the block originally. And Taylor did eventually like go to Lala and be like, Chuck is not with us. We wanted to be loyal to Chuck. He's not with us. So Chuck, Haley, and Barrett went up. Chuck really irritated me this week. I had like genuinely no feelings towards Chuck before this week because he wasn't around much for me to have feelings about. Like, I'm sorry to Chuck. I'm so sorry to Chuck, but I'm not sorry to Chuck. Like the way that he in his DRs was talking about how like, and to Lala's face about how like he has a grasp on the game and she doesn't know how, like she's not playing and everybody thinks that she doesn't know anything. And it's like, you weren't doing anything. You were just in the room. Like Chuck's idea that because he was a number in this big power alliance, that means he held power is annoying to me. It's like, yes, you did have the numbers, but like you added nothing to the alliance. Like you added nothing to the alliance. You were there because Haley, and Kamu were a trio that they then wanted to bring in. If you hadn't been like aligned with Haley and Kamu, would they have brought you in? What were you providing? Kamu, like Chuck's attitude the entirety of Lala's HOH week was like genuinely so frustrating to watch. Like it was so frustrating to watch. It's like, what are you talking about? Okay, Haley's nominated. She finally has a hard week in the house. Oh, and in week 5, the time capsule goes to Mallory and she gets a punishment. It's the Adam and Eve punishment, and she chooses Melody to be her Adam. So there are 2 Eves. I'm glad that she was able to pick a friend. A lot of people had like criticisms of if she should have chosen somebody she wasn't aligned with game wise. And like the thing is, and I do know I obviously have like a bit more perspective now that a few more weeks have passed, but like Mallory is so well liked that I just don't think it was. I don't see how this could have benefited her. And I think for such an uncomfortable punishment, it's good to be with somebody who like you're comfortable with and you're friends with, and they were going to be around each other all the time. It's like, could she have done something strategic with it? Maybe. I think it would have backfired, and it would have just annoyed whoever she chose. Like, who could she have chosen? Like, maybe Dee would have been a good sport about it, but I think Melody was like a good choice. So, anyways, another big moment in week 5, like a big theme throughout week 5 was like the long-term impacts of the flip vote to send Lyric home and save Melody. Obviously, going into week 5, a lot of people, like the dynamics had changed, and it was like really, really fun to watch. Kamu hates, which is why Kamu was able to pivot in the way he did and have it be believable, I guess. Although in retrospect, it's really interesting that so many people genuinely like trusted that Kamu was genuinely abandoning Haley and Chuck, because of all the people in the alliance that flipped the vote, they were not involved in that. Like Haley was HOH, so she couldn't vote, and Chuck voted on the right side. So it's like, of all the people that you would like in week 6, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Okay. But it's just like, it's all connected. Okay. In week 6, a big talking point for why they should save Kamu when Kamu eventually goes on the block. I'm jumping like a million years ahead, okay? But stay with me. A big talking point that Yash kept articulating was like he was making a stand by abandoning his allies. But it's like, and they gave him good reason to turn on them. And it's like, did they though? Like, did they? What did they do to turn on him? They had nothing to do with the vote flip. Like, they had nothing to do with the vote flip. Anyways, sorry. Let me jump back to week 5. So Haley, Chuck, and Barrett are on the block. Barrett is a non-factor. You just need a third number. Anyways, and Lala wanted to put Haley and Chuck up because she didn't want to risk Chuck like winning the HOA, winning the veto and saving Haley, and then none of her options are available. And Kamu had already promised that he wouldn't use the veto, so like that was fine. Haley and Chuck begin to worry that there is a backdoor plan for Kamu because unbeknownst to them, Kamu has thrown them under the bus and is like, I'm no longer working with them. So Haley specifically, because again, no hate to Chuck, but I just don't really feel like he says much. Like, whatever. Like, every time Chuck spoke, it was to be like, Lala doesn't know what she's doing. I'm disgusted by Lala's gameplay. He said disgusted. Okay, like, please calm down with the like. Anyways, Haley wants to throw the veto, or no, not throw the veto. She wants to win the veto and not use it because that way Kamu can't be on the block because they think Kamu is going to be the replacement nominee. Chuck gets house guest choice and picks Kamu. I can't remember who else was competing in that veto. My guess is Melody because she's competed in like every veto, but I don't think it was her probably. I don't even remember what veto it was. I know the next veto was Oteb. I don't remember what the week 5 veto was. Sorry. Oh, wait, I do remember. I don't think Melody was competing in this one. It was the one that Keanu won last season where he said, I believe you have a prompt. Okay. I think D competed in it as well. Did D compete? It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But Chuck chooses Kamu to compete in the veto. Because again, they have no idea that Kamu has like betrayed them. And again, for what reason? I'm not a Chuck and Haley like fan by any means. And I do hate Kamu. I don't think it was a bad move, but it's just like there was no good ammunition to turn on Chuck and like it whatever. It's just genuinely crazy to me thinking back to week 5, the way that Yash was defending that move of Kamu's as like not being a betrayal because they gave him good reason to turn on them. It's like did they? No. If anything, to me that move just proves that Kamu is going to pivot when he needs to pivot to get himself further in the game, and therefore he's not like a loyal number for you, and you can't just keep him around thinking that he'll be like a tool or a vehicle, which was a rhetoric that Yash used very frequently in advocating for Kamu to stay. And I'm so sorry to jump ahead to week 6. Okay, I'm so sorry. Back to week 5. Oh no, okay. See, this is why I don't like having notes on my phone because my phone turned off and I lost my place in my notes. That doesn't happen with a notebook. Anyways, another funny moment. Okay, so the voting had lost long-lasting impacts. Okay, Angela on Sunday in the DR is Sunday's episode, the HOH episode, is talking about how she's a good liar. She's like, I'm actually a good liar. And it was very funny to watch that air on Sunday because she had already had like a bit of a freak out before that aired, but like it hadn't happened yet when she said that in the DR, obviously. But Angela began to spiral very quickly about having lied about the vote. And to me, it was genuinely another moment where I was like, Haley really irritated me because she was so focused on like the votes and who swayed the vote. And she was more focused on like who flipped the vote than like the fact that she was on the block. It's like, maybe argue your case, maybe try to stick around. Like, no, like the HOH wants you gone. You are the target and you're focused on like, whatever, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And it's not even like you really cared about Lyric. Like, I understand. Anyways, sorry. I'm literally, I need to walk back in. Anyways, Angela in the DR says she's such a good liar. And then she freaks out about being a liar. And she has to come clean. And it was so dramatic and so unnecessary. And when the fight happened that eventually aired in the veto episode on Wednesday, feeds cut and we heard like Angela yelling and we obviously heard the aftermath. But it was so much more like it's such a nothing burger compared to what I thought happened. Because like, yes, she did get angry and like curse Haley out, but like it was so, I don't know, like it wasn't that crazy to me. There wasn't really a fight. It was just kind of like they brought Angela up, and she didn't even accuse her of anything like that crazy. Angela got so defensive because she's like, I never said that, Haley. I never said that. And it's like, okay, it didn't need to escalate to like this point where like you're crying about like. And the thing is, I don't think it was like put on or dramatic. Like I think Angela just got that upset. But I'm like, why? They're not saying anything that bad about you. Okay, in season 26, when she cried because of the like implication, whatever, that she felt they were implying that she was racist, it's like, at least I can be like, okay, you don't want people to think you're racist. I still thought that was like an inappropriate reaction when they were approaching her very calmly. Like, whatever, don't get me started on that situation in Big Brother 26. But like that, at least it's like, okay, people cry when they feel like they're being accused of being bad people. Okay, all you were accused of was like saying that D flipped the vote or something so minor that I'm like, who cares? I say all this. I'm obviously not playing the game, whatever. I'm not trying to be a hater to her emotions, but it was just genuinely like the confrontation, the way it was talked about after, and the way it was funny too, because a lot of people who weren't in the room but just hated Haley were like, "We back you, Angela." And in the moment, I'm like, actually watching that, like I do think Angela kind of overreacted. Like it was really not like a big enough deal for her to react the way that she did. But that's okay. That's whatever. It was just funny that she was talking about how good of a liar she was, and then she started panicking about lying. And the thing that gets me too is like the power has shifted at this point. Okay, they're on the block now. You could just be like, look, love you. Uh, we made the decision we thought was best. Like something that really gets me, and maybe it's just because I'm an outsider and I'm not playing the game, and it would be much harder to do this versus just saying it. But something that genuinely always frustrates me as a viewer is why more people don't say, I love you and I want to work with you, but this isn't in my best interest in the game. And I had to make the best choice for me. And I'm sorry. I don't want this. Like, and I understand you can't just act without consequence to your allies and then be like, sorry, this was best interest for me, because then you're a bad ally. But I think there are so many moments when people twist themselves into pretzels of like, how are we going to justify this, or like convince this person that we need to make this move. And it's like, why can't more people just say, hey, I respect that that's how you view the game. I don't view it that way. And I don't want to keep somebody who is a danger to my game. This is what I thought made the most sense. I'm sorry if it screwed you over. I hope we can repair. Like so many people, like that is something that genuinely frustrates me, because I'm like, does it need to be this big thing that you ended up voting out like one of two people who neither of whom were in your alliance? It's not like Lyric was in your alliance and Melody wasn't in your alliance, and you voted out somebody in your alliance, therefore breaking up the alliance. It's like, okay, you voted against what the plan initially was. You're still safe. Your alliance is still intact. Like, let's just move forward. Like, it genuinely does irritate me. And again, I understand I'm not playing the game. I understand there are a lot of intricacies to things, and like it's different. It's more difficult when you're actually in it. Okay, I understand. I'm an outsider perspective. You can never know how you're going to react when you're in the game. Like Barrett on his podcast said that he would never throw his game away for anybody, and look at him now. So I'm not I'm not saying that I would 100% play, like that I know 100% how I would play if I were to play. But that is just something that genuinely frustrates me, because I'm like, why can't more people say that? Like, why can't more people say that? I think what gets me too, as a viewer, it's annoying to watch people like vote and then be like, oh, I wish I didn't vote that way or whatever. Like, I just wish more people were like, I need to do this because it's best for my game, or like, or lie, but still do what's best for your game. Like, I feel like sometimes people end up doing something that's counterintuitive or not what they would want to do because of other people, and then it just screws them over. And I'm like, I feel like it's better to, in a game like Big Brother, like ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And I would just vote the people out that I need to vote out, and then try to mend the relationships with the people who maybe feel burned by me, instead of like the other way around. It's like this constant thing of like, no, but whatever. I'm literally such a disaster, and I took notes and I'm still rambling. Anyways, Oh my God, a very funny moment that was not included in the edited show was that Drew was told originally that he was going to be one of the nominees. Lala told him this. He tried to convince her for him not to be one of the nominees. That didn't work. I believe Barrett tried as well. It didn't work. Kamu and Taylor eventually swayed things. And Yash, I believe, was maybe part of that. I'm not really quite sure. It's been forever now at this point, and I'm whatever. Yash was obviously, maybe not obviously, but Yash, Taylor, and Lala are in like a close trio. So he was there a lot during the HOH. Anyways, Drew thought he was going on the block. So he was like, okay, if I can't convince you not to go on the block, can you at least like turn my key last? He dressed up in a nice little suit. And then nobody told him because the plans changed. The plans changed so last minute that nobody told him. So he was just dressed up for the nomination ceremony. And that wasn't included in the episode at all. So like if nobody knew the context, he was just like dressed up all nice. It was so funny. It was so funny. And I think he said, he was like, if people like it, it's just gonna look like I was like celebrating them because like I'm not on the block. It was funny. That was really funny. And it didn't make the episode because I understand there was a lot of it, that HOH episode, like the beginning of it, a lot of it was like the vote flipping on the Thursday to save Melody. And because of that, the HOH competition started late. So by the time they were getting to like the nom section and the deliberation of noms, plus they had to do the Adam and Eve punishment beginning of that. So like there was a lot to cover that week. They ended up just not including that because I guess it wasn't as like important, whatever. But that Drew subplot was not included in the edited show, and it was funny to watch on feeds of him getting all dressed up and then him being so happy that he was nominated. Like that was so unserious. Anyways, see, it's like there are a lot of really big things that you miss by watching feeds, by not watching feeds, but then there's also fun little things like that that you miss. So it's like, and this is so random, but I just had this thought. In on Sundays, they get the phone to record videos for like social media, and they did the like I'm on Big Brother, of course, blah 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 trend. And Mallory was like, "Of course, I poop in the dishwasher." And I'm like, if people don't watch feeds, and like, or even if they do, but they've just missed that recurring bit, that makes no sense to anybody. Like, it was so funny to me that they included that in the like. Anyways, another thing that happened week 5 is Dee finally revealed to Devins that she did in fact have the power. She revealed what it was. It's the bribe. And she also told Kamu. She also told Kamu that she had the bribe. For what reason, who knows? Whatever. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. But it didn't really have any consequences for her of Kamu knowing the bribe, about the bribe. Another thing that happened during week 5 was FAP made the edit. They had, I think, like a while ago said their name was FAP, but then they were trying, it stands for fuck ass people, but they were trying to come up with like a PG name for it in the show. So they ended up calling it like For the American People. They also never call it FAP, they call it FAP. Because FAP means something else. Another important thing from week 5 was there was a conversation in the HOH room, and at first it was Yash. I don't think Taylor was there actually. Was Taylor there? I don't remember. Lala, Yash, Mallory, and Melody. Maybe Taylor was there. I can't remember. She wasn't there the whole time. I don't like I remember and I can visualize Yash speaking and Melody speaking in this interaction, but I do not think that I do not think that Taylor was there. So they bonded over first Melody and Lala really bonded over their dislike of Haley, and then eventually they started talking about the icons and how they need to get the icons out. Okay, I had to pause the recording and I don't remember where I left off in my notes. The conversation in the HOH room began with like Melody and Haley, or Melody and Lala bonding over their dislike of Haley. And then the conversation pivoted to getting the icons out. At this point, Drew and Barrett had joined, and I was watching like, no, please shut up. Drew and Barrett will rat you out. They will rat you out. And like the thing is, whatever. And they did rat them out. who can be surprised? Moving on, because I genuinely don't remember what else I wanted to say about that. So on the day of the eviction, Haley suddenly they want to. For a while, it's been Haley's gonna go. Haley's gonna go. Lala wants Haley to go. They're gonna send Haley home. Wait, oh my god, I'm so stupid. I didn't even like. I feel like I implied this, but like I don't even know if Common didn't use his veto. Okay, he didn't use his veto, so nominations stayed the same. It was still Chuck, Haley, and Barrett. Whatever. Haley on Thursday, they've decided for some reason that I really couldn't tell you. I don't understand the logic that they, in fact, wanting to keep Haley. Now, Chuck is such a nothing burger that I really don't blame them. And I don't like Haley, but at least she provides a little something. And I said that early on where I was like, I don't like Kamu, Haley, and Chuck, but like Haley makes me laugh sometimes. I'm gotten to the point now where she doesn't really do that much for me anymore. So I'd be fine. Like at this point, I don't care about Haley being there. But like Chuck genuinely, and the way he handled this week, like I was happy to see him go because the way he spoke to Lala was like genuinely very disrespectful. He like told Lala she doesn't know what she's doing, that everybody doesn't know what she's doing, that he's been like so well insulated. That Taylor also tried to like speak to Chuck and be like, you need to offer people something. Like, what are you offering people? And he just like didn't have any good answers. Like, it really irritates me when somebody is such a cocky like person and thinks that they're so well insulated and that like other people aren't playing the game. And then when people try to like help them or like it really like it would be one thing if Chuck spoke to Lala the way she did, but it was like the fact that Taylor was trying to give him pointers and he like whatever. And even up until the point he got evicted, because Haley, although the votes were like starting to flip for Haley, she won the blockbuster, so it wasn't even a question at that point. If Barrett was on the block, Barrett was going to stay. So it was Barrett versus Chuck, and Chuck went. And Haley was the one vote for Chuck to stay. I voted for Chuck to go. Sorry. I was thinking of Celebrity Big Brother where he goes, I vote Chuck. And then after they're like, who was the one vote for Chuck? And he goes, I voted for Chuck to stay. And they go, you voted for Chuck to go. That was what was in my head. Anyways, even up until the point where he was evicted and Julie Chen Moonves was asking him questions, he was like not able to budge on the fact that like, no, Lala actually didn't know anything. Like I was in such a good spot. One question that I did really like that Julie asked him is, what did you do to prepare for Big Brother? Because I really don't think he did anything. I think he had spoken on feeds about how he doesn't like superfans. He's only seen like 3 episodes of the show. Like I was really happy to see him go because I don't even think he really liked Big Brother. Like I was so relieved to see him go. And like he added nothing. He was a number for people I didn't like. Whatever. I was happy to see Chuck go. I was really happy to see Chuck go. I think it's better that Haley won. So like it wouldn't in any way, like, not that I think it would have caused like that big of an issue if they ended up flipping the votes. But like, I do just think, and like the thing is, people still use that against them. Like they didn't end up flipping the votes, but they could still use that against them because it's not like people didn't know they were trying to flip the votes. And that is one thing that I really am not the biggest fan of. I would say Ann Devins, but I feel like D a lot of the times is the person spearheading it. Maybe that's just my perception of it. Maybe that's inaccurate. But I don't like this, like, out of nowhere, just flipping the target. Like, if something arises and you realize something, I think it's fine to flip the target, okay? And I'm not going to complain when it benefited me, okay? I'm glad Melody's still around. She's my number 1 client. Like, I really love Melody. I really love Mallory. So like I'm not upset that the votes flipped. And I also like no hate to her, but I wasn't sad to see Lyric go. Like she seems lovely. I don't really but I think she kind of did it to herself because she was really messy in the way that she maneuvered the game. And I think it just bit her in the butt and I can't really like I was happy to see her go. Also, she and Rome have reunited and they're like thriving. Like I don't think she cared enough about being in the game as Drew and Melody did that week. So of the 3, I'm glad that like, especially Melody was like crying and like Drew was crying and like, I don't know. I'm glad that of the scenario, the Lyric went home and I wish her nothing but the best. Like, I'm not saying anything negative about Lyric. I just like genuinely, feeds have felt like no different. In fact, the mere like the flip itself caused such a like great impact that like I really am glad that things happened that way, not just because Melody stayed, but because it like fucked over the red corner. Feeds were really interesting. People were blindsided, fights happened. It was like a great series of events, all because Melody is a comp top and Lyric was kind of shady. Like, also, I wrote this down in my notes, and I cannot for the life of me remember what this was in relation to. I think she was talking about Angela, but Haley at some point has a DR where she's talking about how somebody's acting like a sad kitten on the side of the road, and that really irritated me because I'm like, kittens don't like beg on the side of the road. What are you talking about? I don't know why I wrote that down. It's really not that important. It just was something that Haley said that bothered me because I'm like, oh my God, there was a really funny moment. I think it was, yeah. It might have been during Yasha's HOH, actually, so it doesn't matter. But there was one, I think it was Yasha's HOH, so let me not jump ahead. But you know what? Actually, let me just jump ahead really quickly in case it was week 5. But it was probably not week 5. Okay, it was probably week 6. There was literally a moment where Haley's crying in the DR, and she's like, and I really hope that you're not trying to do a DR right now and do an interview because I would need to go do makeup. So respectfully, I hope that's not what you're doing. And I did feel kind of bad for her, but I'm like, how do you go into the DR and not always just think that they're like, it, you know, like I think maybe if they have some kind of like psychologist or a doctor you're seeing, then like obviously I wouldn't expect to be being recorded if like the medic was seeing me. I mean, honestly, I probably still, but it's like, what do you mean you're speaking to like a producer in the diary room or whatever the format is? I've never been in the diary room. How do I know? I mean, I think there's somebody in the DR that you're speaking to from my recollection, from everything I've heard. But like, what do you mean you're in the DR and you think that they're not going to use that? Anyways, but let me move on to week 6. So week 6, before the HOH is played, there is a combo that happens between Kamu and Haley, I think. I don't remember. But yeah, I think it was Haley. Kamu finds out that Dee said that he swore on the Bible, and this really upsets Kamu. Now, I don't know because I don't recall her having a DR addressing this. If she did, I forgot it. Or I don't know if she's mentioned it on feeds, but I don't know if that was like a straight up lie or if she just like got stories confused because there was a moment where like before the Melody Lyric Drew vote, Drew was suspicious and asked Kamu, hey, are you guys keeping me? And he asked him to swear on the Bible, and Kamu said, I promised myself I wouldn't, like I promised I wouldn't do that even if it was true. No, I'm not going to swear on the Bible. And Drew did tell them, Kamu said he was going to swear on the Bible. So like, I don't know if Dee is taking that and like misremembering it and twisting it. I don't really think it matters one way or the other. Like whatever people feel about like, oh, he swore on the Bible, he didn't swear on the Bible. To me, even if somebody swore on the Bible, who cares? If somebody refuses to swear on the Bible, who cares? I mean, if like I would be sketched out. The thing is, I actually wouldn't. I don't think I'd care because I would, even though it's a game and I wouldn't care to like, it wouldn't mean anything to me if I sweared on a Bible or a loved one's life or whatever. Like, I also understand that part of Big Brother is like people have different values and morals and like whatever. And it for somebody a boundary, like for me, I mean, I guess this isn't the same in any capacity, but I was like, I don't feel like I would ever like use some kind of bigotry to advance. Like, I feel like if I saw somebody being bigoted in some sense, like I don't think that I would like use it in a game sense. Like I feel like I would have certain lines that would feel like moral lines for me. So I feel like I would never like take it offensively if somebody refused to swear on the Bible. If I saw them swearing on the Bible with somebody else and then they didn't do it with me, then maybe there'd be an issue because it'd be hypocritical. But I wouldn't just like be upset that like somebody was like, no, I said I wouldn't do that, because I feel like people are allowed. And I'm not like I hate Kamu, but I do think at the end of the day, I think people at the end of the day are allowed to have their boundaries and their limits in whatever way that's the thing. So even though for me, not swearing on the Bible is like lame and it's like grow up, it's a book. if that's your moral line, then that's your moral line. Okay. Like his moral line is different than mine. He crossed lines that that I wouldn't, whatever. So for me, that means nothing to me. And if somebody said, "Oh, I mean, swore on the Bible," I would like. But I do understand if I had like a line and then somebody was like, "Emmy did X, Y, and Z," and I felt like that. I don't know. I don't know. Let me move on. I don't care enough about Kamu in the Bible for me to ramble about it for this long. The week 6 HOH was bugs in the system. It was like a knockout comp, and it was like themed around Y2K, and it was like super, super fun. It was like December 31st, 1999. Melody was like, I wasn't even born in 1999. I was about 6 months old, December 31st, 1999. So that was me. I love being born in the 90s. Like, 1999 kind of like the best year to be born. Because also, like, if the world had ended in 2000, I would have been a baby. So, like, that wouldn't have impacted me. I would have gotten to be born, live 6 months of my life, experience life, and then I'm out with the universe. Like, you know, that would have just been my story. The week, let me move on. The week 6 HOH was a knockout comp, and it was kind of like, how a knockout comp works. So random draw, the first two people were Yash and Kamu. Kamu was eliminated. Then Yash picked, I don't remember, Melody and somebody else, Haley maybe? I don't remember. Melody survived that round. Melody played quite a bit. Like, Barrett wasn't picked until towards the end. Neither were Mallory. Like, at some point, the final four were Yash, Melody, Barrett, and Mallory. And Barrett and Mallory, like, hadn't been chosen yet. So, like, at some point, Yash got eliminated. Yash won because whoever he was up against got eliminated. And he picked Mallory and Barrett because they had yet to go. So, like, they weren't chosen until towards the end. Melody got chosen a few times. It was genuinely very funny because it was like Yash at some point, I think, picked Devins and Taylor. No, he didn't pick. I don't know. At some point, like, Taylor picked Devins, and then Devins picked D, and then D picked Devins again, and it was so confusing. They like agreed to pick themselves, but then they knocked each other out. D also threw the competition. Like, she said in her DRs, like, I feel safe with these people, so like I'm not really paying attention to the numbers. So like she kind of screwed herself over. I mean, the week worked out for her, but FIP, the really, I saw this really funny tweet. It cracked me up, where it was like that clip of Zach Rance when he's like, he's like, "Pow, you suck at everything straight up." Somebody was like, "FAP, you suck at everything straight up," and like they kind of do. I mean, Mallory's kind of good, and Drew threw a lot at the beginning, so who knows what he'd be good at. I don't know. I think Melody's not horrible. Like, she's done an okay job in most comps. Like, Melody's the kind of player who, like, if she lasts into the end game, she has a good chance to, like, really win a lot of the end game comps, depending on who her competition is, because she's come close. So, like, the less people she's competing against, the better chance she'll have, obviously. And she's not, like, a horrible competitor. So, like, whatever. But 3 of the final 4 were FAP members, and they still didn't win. Melody was in 3rd place, and then the final 2 were Barrett and Yash won. Congrats to Yash. D from the beginning felt safe. She was in an alliance with Yash, which was the Wolf Pack. It was Devins, Kamu, Yash, and D. So she feels safe. Kamu, however, is pissed at D, so he's really pushing hard for D to be nominated, and Yash is on board with D being nominated. From the beginning, he is thinking Angela and Haley, and D at first is the 3rd nominee option, like, from the beginning, but just as a pawn. Kamu wants her to be the target from the beginning, but D at the beginning is really just a pawn. He doesn't want to nominate Devins because he's close with Devins. So, like, even though there is, like, an anti-icon sentiment, and he does finally want to nominate the icons, Devins is not really a consideration. Yash has a loyalty to him, which, there are a lot of missteps And obviously, Yosh did get heavily screwed by like the power, which was out of his control and out of really anybody's control, because Devins didn't really like play a game or do anything to earn it. Like he pressed a button at the right time, and I'm not discounting like that he then used it in an interesting positive way. But it's like Yosh did, and I'm not saying that I'm particularly like devastated for Yosh. Like I'm not a Yosh stan, but like Yosh did get screwed over by a power he had no idea was in play, and there were certain things that he could have done that would have maybe like had things work out a little bit differently. So I don't know. There's also always like a million different case scenarios when it comes to like a game of Big Brother. So I'm not trying to like clown on Yosh, because I do think he made I think he should have nominated. Again, I have more insight than he does. I understand why he wouldn't want to nominate Devins if he's loyal to Devins, but I think at the end of the day, and I think Lala should have done this too, I think the newbies like had gotten to a point where they were like the icons of too much power. I feel like they reached that point a little bit too late, because I feel like the first moment one of them had HOH, and I understand like the thing is Lala was close to Dee and Angela, so I understand she didn't want to just nominate. Like I think it's really like complicated and difficult when the icons have had power from the beginning to the point where now people have different relationships with like a variety of people in the house beyond just the layer of like icon versus newbie. So like while you want to make a move of like let me target all the icons, it might not be the best move for you individually to nominate Angela or Dee or Devin just because they are the icons, but like because the icons do have a loyalty to themselves first and foremost, you really screw yourself over by not just nominating all three from the beginning, because at the end of the day, they will protect themselves. Like so many things could have been avoided if Devins had been on the block. But he wasn't on Lala's HOH because, you know, and then he wasn't on Yosh's HOH either. And it's like if Devins wasn't off the block and then able to use it on somebody who was on the block, his diamond power veto, then like you know what I mean? Like there were so many factors that could have changed things. And I think at the end of the day, if there's a lesson to be learned from the way everything happened, is that if there is a solid trio like that and you are trying to target the returnees, I think you need to prioritize targeting the returnees and then working with the newbies instead of like being like, well, I have a really good, like you either have to go all in. Like the issue was the newbies, like Lala didn't want to burn certain relationships she had, so she was prioritizing that. Yosh didn't want to burn his relationship with Devin, so he was prioritizing that, where it's like you should just go straight for like nominate all three new icons, but there was too much room for error. Anyway, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. But Dee was not originally a target for Yosh. Dee doesn't think she's in danger, but after Yosh has a conversation with Devins, she gets clued in on the fact that she's in danger. So she tries to bribe him, and this was cut from feeds, which was annoying. And he says no. He turns down the bribe. He says no. And that was very exciting on feeds. I'm like, you know what? Shout out to you. Like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Like, obviously, we didn't watch the conversation, but like, Dee was upset after the fact that he turned down the bribe. And it was just funny because before she was like very confident that he would accept the bribe, and then he turned it down. And it was whatever. It was fun for those few moments. I mean, it lasted a little bit as well, but not like the whole week, obviously. But I think for me, one of my favorite things about Big Brother is when like the pendulum shifts and like the people who are like have been very comfortably in power have to like pivot and like to me, the best Big Brother players are the ones who play well from the bottom as well as those who play well in power. So I was excited to see, even though I didn't really have anything against like Devins or Dee or Angela, I was excited to see them. I've grown kind of tired of their gameplay at this point of whatever. And I'll get into that more in week 7, but like, which is my next podcast episode. I'll talk about that next week. But like, not even because I was particularly like rooting against them or whatever. And again, I'm not like the biggest fan of Yosh and was wishing for his plans to go super well. Like he was very closely aligned with Kamu, who I literally hate so much. Like, as I said at the beginning of this podcast episode, any scenario where I can hope that Kamu somehow goes home is a scenario I'm rooting for. I didn't want Kamu in the house. He is the kind of person that I don't think deserves to be on television and deserves to be given airtime. But alas, let me keep moving on. Anyways, so it was interesting to see like Dee have to play from the bottom. So the bribe doesn't work. So now they're considering like the Diamond Power veto. Obviously, if the veto's going to be played first, so like obviously if they win the veto, then they don't have to use the Diamond Power veto. But like that's obviously a consideration. Also, Melody won the time capsule, but she got a punishment as well. She was the lady of the latrine. I will say it was really fun to watch on feeds because she seemed to like really enjoy it, and like she liked being goofy, and like it was nice. Her spirits did rise. I know I said that a little bit at the end of my week 4 episode where I was like, I feel like Melody wasn't super like active, but I feel like with her confidence changing, like she'll be a lot better. And I do think like week 5 she did better. In week 6 she was really gaming, and I'll get into that as like the tail end of the week happens, because Monday through Thursday was like genuinely like whiplash, and I'll get to it. Like so much happened this week towards the end of it. But the bribe fails. At first she offers like keep me and Angela safe, and he says no, and then she's like keep me safe, and he says no. So the final nominees are Angela, Haley, and Dee. And something interesting that he said during the HOH episode when he was having a conversation with Kamu, and I think Drew might have been in the room, is that when he was talking about nominating Haley, he's like, if everybody in the house is calling for your head, I'd be stupid to like not nominate you. Because he's like, I don't really have an issue with Haley, but like if everybody has an issue with you, then like it would be stupid not to. And I'm like, I know not everybody outwardly had an issue with Kamu, but I feel like a lot more people did have issues with Kamu than they articulated to Yash during his HOH. And the thing is, I think it was a lost cause. Like I don't think he would have budged, but I wish more people had been like more upfront with Yash. Like the thing is, a lot of people tried. Like I'm going back and forth because I'm like, I feel like people should have just been. The issue is people did try to be upfront, but they would like frame it as like being devil's advocate or being like, look, I have my doubts, but nobody would be like firmly like, no, I'm not voting. Like, no, I'm 100% against Kamu. Whereas a lot of people were like, Haley, I want Haley gone. I want Haley gone. You know what I mean? But like, whatever. That was just an interesting comment because I'm like, a lot of people didn't want to keep Kamu though. The veto competition is OTEV. And OTEV was really, really like interesting in terms of like the way people performed. And they were talking about this on feeds obviously before I watched the episode because the episode aired after. And it was really funny to watch it after having like heard it, because a lot of the newbies, not the newbies specifically, but it's like competing in OTEV were Melody, Yash, because he's the HOH, Haley, Dee, Angela, and Barrett. And Mallory, Melody, and Yash, I think at some point were in the HOH talking about how like how bad like Dee and Haley performed. And at some point Mallory was like, they didn't have to pay attention at all. Like they didn't know the answers because they weren't worried about that kind of stuff. Like they didn't care. Like they were just smooth sailing all the week. So they weren't paying attention to like what votes were what, or like who used the veto when, because they didn't have to worry about like if the veto was going to be used on me. Whereas like Mallory, Melody, they were like, I mean, the thing is, at some point, I think it was Mallory was like, Haley was telling me that she should have like studied more. And I'm like, I didn't need to study. Like I lived it. Like I didn't need to study. Like this is just something that like I've experienced because I lived it. Like I didn't have to go back and like study. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with like studying when you've lived things. I have a horrible memory. So if I was playing Big Brother, I would have to go back and be like, okay, what were the votes? And I'd remember it. The vetoes, I really don't think that I would have any issue remembering like who used the veto on like they didn't remember that Rick Devens used the veto on Lyric. Like I feel like I would have remembered that. Like whatever. And it's really funny too because Haley kept saying on feeds that she was like, she's not good with riddles. And I'm like, those weren't riddles. Like it's okay if you can say I just didn't know the answers, but she's like, no, I was just not thinking about it, or like I didn't, you know. It's like it's fine. You just didn't know the answer. You just didn't know the answer. I really did think that it was a really interesting moment on how being like comfortable in the game. And again, another reason that I think a good Big Brother player, it's interesting to see them play from the bottom and from a place of power. I would prefer to watch somebody play from the bottom for the majority and then get power at the end. I think that's more compelling because I think your ability to save yourself when you're in danger is a lot more interesting than like just coasting or like being well insulated. Like Chuck is not an interesting player because, and he's the exact kind of player who like thinks they're good and they know what's going on because they're in like the dominant alliance when they are adding nothing to it but a number. Like he was just there because he was a number and not a valuable enough number for them to care. So sorry for whacking Chuck, but I'm actually not sorry for whacking Chuck. He didn't like the show. He hated superfans. Why am I going to be sorry for whacking Chuck? I'm not. So anyways, but OTEV was just such an interesting competition to watch the way other people like played. Melody did a really good job. I was like so proud of her. Angela would sucked. Sorry. Dee and Haley also sucked. Barrett, Yosh, and Melody did the best, and it was Yosh. Melody was out third. It was Yosh and Barrett again, and Yosh won. So congrats to Yosh. So Yosh has the veto. This is another one of those moments where, again, they don't have the full knowledge of like the diamond powered veto, but Yosh having the veto and not thinking to use it was like, again, I have more knowledge, but like he kept talking about how he didn't want Haley to go home and he wanted one of the icons to go home. And it's like, then you could at this point use the veto on Haley and put one of the icons' numbers up, like put Barrett on the block then. So then even if whatever, I mean, I don't think it would have mattered, but like because of the diamond power of veto, but it could have maybe, honestly, it would have made things more interesting in terms of campaigning and arguing for the votes because there was a lot of conversation. Anyways, let me just jump to Monday. Sorry. Because a lot of this doesn't make sense. I've already said that Kami goes on the block. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like genuinely a disaster. But you know, hopefully that's fun. Hopefully that's enjoyable. So as I was saying, Yosh is like not going to use the veto. He's like, I don't care who goes home. Why am I going to change the nominations? And he ends up therefore not changing the nominations. On Sunday, I was watching this on feeds. He was like, man, this week has been so easy. Everything's going smooth sailing. I have the veto. Like, I was like, they're just playing in his face. They're playing in his face. I was like, why are you showing me this now when I know it's not true? Like, I felt kind of like a little bit bad for him. I'm like, I also just think I'm too paranoid and anxious of a person to ever say something like that, especially if I'm playing a game, because I'd be like, oh my God, they're literally about to screw me over. Like, I'm not going to, like, anyways. But I also like, whatever, he did. And you do know there are powers, okay? If you had no knowledge that there are powers, maybe it'd be like, okay, I understand being fully confident, but like he has to know that there's a chance that something can change. There are powers out there. I wonder if the fact that he knew that Dee had a flop power like made him feel more confident because he's like, well, Devins definitely has a flop power. And I protected Devin. So like, why would Devins isn't on the block, you know? So, and there was a lot of discourse because at this point, Devins has decided that he's going to use the diamond power veto and the replacement nominee is going to be Kamu. And at this point, there is a lot of discourse about how stupid Rick Devins is for using the diamond power veto on somebody else because what if he needs it? And I too was having this conflict. And obviously now that I know like how it all played out and the, like who won HOH for week 7, which like I'm not going to mention because I don't want to jump too far ahead because I already mixed my week 5 and week 6 recap more than I meant to. But like, I think knowing the fact that it expired in this week that we're on right now, it made sense for him to use it last week, week 6, because if a scenario happened in week 7 where one of his allies is the HOH and there's no chance he's touching the block, then the power would have gone to waste. Now, I don't know if I would, and Rick Devins didn't want it to go to waste. He's like, I would have used it regardless. So I think it's better that like it all worked out the way it needed to. Okay. Like it was an investment that paid off for him. So like obviously hindsight being 2020, it worked out. Could it have been really stupid if somebody else won HOH and then he's on the block and he goes home? Obviously. But it was a risk he was worth taking because he knew that Dee was a valuable number for him and that Kamu was a threat. And it worked out. So what can I say? Plus I was happy because like Kamu's going on the block. So how can I be upset? How can I be upset? I'm not upset. So veto ceremony on Monday. Yosh does not use the veto. Rick Devens does use the Diamond Power veto on D, nominates Kamu. Oh, on Sunday before this happens, the Mosh Pit Alliance is formalized, and that's the former like Crossovers Alliance, which is D, Devens, Angela, Barrett, and Drew. They add Mallory and Melody and call themselves the Mosh Pit. The future of that alliance, TBD. And by that, I mean, it's really hard for me to record these once the next week has already started because I'm like, so much has already happened in week 7 that I want to talk about, but I can't. Okay, I can't. I will take my notes so I'll remember all of it. But anyways, from the beginning, okay, Kamu's on the block now. Melody and Mallory are like, we're voting at Kamu. We're voting at Kamu. There's no way we're not going to vote at Kamu. Like, we've wanted to get rid of Kamu. And I was like, hallelujah, Kamu's going. Let's just hope he loses the blockbuster. Okay, Kamu's going in every circumstance. Now, Tuesday is when things really begin to shift. And I begin to be scared because, and I will give them a lot of credit, specifically Yosh, because Yosh, at first I didn't like Yosh Yosh from the beginning was pushing really hard. Like, as soon as Kamu's on the block, he's like, well, we have the numbers, so we're going to keep Kamu regardless. Melody and Mallory are like, we're not keeping Kamu. On Tuesday, Yosh puts in a lot of work with Mallory and Melody, and Mallory and Melody begin to shift. They begin to consider keeping Kamu, and I begin to become very scared because I didn't want Kamu to stay. And they were so passionately anti-Kamu that I was like, that's never going to happen. Okay, they're not going to convince them. They're too smart to realize that Kamu is a threat. Because here's the thing, okay? I understand the anti-icon sentiment. I do. I just spoke a little bit ago about how I think if you really want to lock in, the best move is just recognize that trio is inseparable and nominate all 3 of them. And then and that's what you need to do every time if you're trying to get the icons out, instead of just nominating 2 of them. And especially with the blockbuster, because even if the Diamond Power veto wasn't used, if it was Angela and Haley on the block and D had won the blockbuster, and then it's Angela and Haley final noms, there's a good chance that Haley still goes, and you want the best case scenario with 3 icons on the block. So it just doesn't make sense to not nominate all 3 of them from the beginning anyways, if you're trying to target that trio of the icons. So that was a mistake that I do think Lala and Yosh made if ultimately their goal was to get the icons out. I think that just became a goal later. I think they were approaching their HOHs more individually with we need to get the icons out eventually, but it wasn't we need to get the icons out the first moment we can. And I think if they had that perspective, things would have gone differently. But anyways, let me move on. Yosh is pushing for Kamu to go or to stay from the beginning. Okay. And here's the thing. I would understand. I was really scared because I didn't think that Kamu staying was the best case scenario for Mallory and Melody, because if it was D on the block or even Devens, I would understand it more. But I'm if the goal, the only positive to getting Angela out over Kamu is that Angela is an icon. She's a number for them. But to me, that is not a big enough benefit as the risks of leaving a competition beast who's not loyal and will turn on you and is shifty, and Kamu, and he was I don't like him, but he was good at the game, and therefore he was a threat. He was good at comms. He could talk himself out of things. He was a threat. It made no sense to Angela as an icon is not a bigger threat than Kamu is. All of the arguments to keeping Kamu were frustrating me, and I understood to some degree on an emotional level, the conflict that Melody was having, that Melody and Mallory were having, of not wanting to betray the people that they were close to from the beginning for this new alliance with the icons, who I understand. And I will say the icons did a bad job of reassuring them and keeping them feeling that was a real alliance. They formed that alliance, they nominated Kamu, and then they just kind of were well, we're in an alliance now. You have to vote with us. Whereas Yosh, as much as I disagreed with his points, and I was no, please do not keep Kamu, he was putting in work that the icons weren't putting in. The only person who like, and thank God that they were honest with him, because for all that could, like, they could have not been honest with him and like not been like, hey Drew, we want to keep Kamu, and then Kamu wouldn't have, or then Drew wouldn't have pushed back. But like the only person who like genuinely argued the case in the other direction was Drew, because like I really, while I was upset with them because I didn't want Kamu to stay, and I felt like they were like losing sight of the good, valid reasons that they had to get Kamu out, because they didn't want to burn things with Taylor and Yash, and they didn't want to like do what the Icons wanted. That was a big conversation. It was like, we can't do what the Icons want us to do. Can't let the Icons, like, they're using us, like, and that was an argument that like both Taylor and Yash used, of like, we can't take the shot that they want us to take. And I just disagree with that logic, because at the end of the day, if it's a shot that like benefits you, then you should take it regardless of who else wants you to take it. Like, I don't think that like the enemy of my enemy is my friend like works in a game of Big Brother. And it's like, okay, just because they want Kamu out doesn't mean that Kamu staying is good for me. Like, it might be bad for them, but what's bad for them isn't necessarily good for me. Even if we're not super aligned, it's like you can be on opposite sides, and the same thing could still be good for both of you. Like, it just, the way like their arguments weren't compelling to me, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that they put in a lot of work and they did sway Melody and Mallory. I was like frustrated and I was scared, because I was like, no, don't lose sight of why Kamu needs to go. Okay. And I think Drew would have benefited. And the thing is, he's too loyal to the Icons to have done this, but Drew would have really like benefited from being like, hey, I hear your hesitation with the Icons. Let's put that aside for right now, and like, let's not make this move for them or against them or whatever. Let's make this move because it makes the most sense. And then depending who wins power next week, we can reevaluate. And if one of us has power, maybe we go after the Icons. And if they have power, then we stay with them until they don't. Like, that's what I understand. I have more insight onto how much they really were doubting the Icons. But like, Drew was just very much like, no, we need to stick with the Icons. We need to stick with the Icons. And I just feel like a more like compelling argument would have been like, let's put the Icons to the side. Because so much of the argument of like keeping Kamu or sending Kamu home or whatever is about like the impact to the Icons in their game. And it's like, at the end of the day, they're three people, but they're not the only players. It's like, Kamu doesn't benefit Melody's game. Kamu doesn't benefit Mallory's game. He nominated Mallory. She almost went home on his HOH. And he wasn't promising them anything besides, I'm going after the Icons. Okay, a lot of other people can go after the Icons. Like, he was like, let's do this, where it's like newbies versus Icons. And it's like, or he kept calling them rookies versus Icons. I'm like, okay, like, there are more rookies than Icons. They can still do that without you. And it's like, yeah, okay, they can't have power every week, so they can't do it. But they can just, if they really want to lock in on getting the Icons out, they can just, every week that an Icon doesn't have power, all three Icons are on the block until the Icons go. Like, you can lock in and get the Icons out without keeping Kamu around, who at some point will then get one of you out. Like, it really irritated me the way Yash kept being like, he's a tool for us. We will get him out in a few weeks, because it's like, Kamu is not just like the mystery competitor who's like being brought in because you want a power or whatever. And the only purpose of them is to like win a comp for you. Like, Kamu is a self-interested player who would still be playing the game for his own benefit, who literally betrayed his allies and like is a smooth talker and can sell people things and has shifted based off of when he needed to. Like, Kamu didn't betray his allies of Chuck and Haley because they did something to him. Like, from my perspective, that's not what happened. Okay, yes, the vote flipped, and yes, that alliance kind of blew up, but not because of anything Chuck or Haley did or Kamu. They were all on the same side of that. He clocked, like, Lala was in power, so he did what he needed to do to make sure he wasn't on the block that week. That's why he was aligned with Lala's side all of a sudden. He wasn't aligned with Lala's side. Lala was aligned with, like, all the people in the pod were on the other side of Kamu's side. Like, now he's suddenly aligned with them. Kamu's not loyal to you because he's loyal to you, okay? He's loyal to you because right now you're the people in power. And like, I'm not criticizing that as like a mechanic in the game or a way to maneuver the game. That is what it is. But it isn't a good enough reason to argue that he is an asset to stick around. Like the way that they were arguing for Kamu to stay, I was just like, okay, if it was D and you like she had already won Survivor and she can win competitions, and like, okay, whatever, you want to get rid of D. Even Devins has won a few competitions. He has power. You want to get rid of Devins. Angela over like Kamu made no sense. And Haley then, sorry, it was like low-key a non-factor. But like, it made no sense. It made no sense. But I will give them credit for swaying Melody and Mallory, because I do think that was like something that they did because they were putting in effort that the icons just weren't putting in. Like, they didn't check in with them at all after. And Drew ran it back to the icons that like they were unsure. And so then he ran back to them that like the icons are going to come after you guys if you don't do this. But like there wasn't much work that the icons were putting in to be like, please vote for Kamu. I genuinely have you. Like there was like, so in that regard, as angry as I was at Mallory and Melody for like losing sight of the reasons that like sending Kamu home were good and are smart, I understood their hesitation from these people are putting effort with us. And also Yosh like did give Melody a lot of information about like alliances Drew was in and ways that like Drew was like I understand she began to really like, it wasn't just him arguing why Kamu would stay. It was him throwing Drew under the bus and having Melody really, really doubt her relationship and alliance with Drew, to the point where she was like, fuck the icons and also like low-key fuck Drew. So like, why am I going to do like, Drew's bringing me into this alliance. Now all of a sudden it's very convenient timing. They brought us in just for this Kamu vote. Like I understood all of the thought processes, even though I was frustrated at the like the original thought process that they were losing in, and eventually it worked out the way it needed to, because the scenario that I was least expecting to happen, to be quite honest, happened, which is that Angela won the blockbuster. And Angela winning the blockbuster was genuinely, again, the scenario I was least expecting. I'm sorry to Angela. I'm sorry that I doubted you. She had competed in a few blockbusters and she'd never won. So like, I don't feel like I was just doubting her based off of like nothing. But it was a comp that Tucker had won and had given her pointers on how to win, and she implemented them and she did win. And that was like the best case scenario for Kamu going, because with Angela's vote, regardless of what, because Melody and Mallory were really debating what to do, because they at some point decided that they did need to send Kamu home, but they were wondering if they could like send Kamu home with enough plausible deniability that Yosh would like this is kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, that I wish more people could be like, hey, this isn't about you, but it's not the best game move, because they kept being like, I don't know if we should keep Kamu. And then Yosh would be like, here are the reasons we should keep Kamu. And they'd be like, I hear you. And it's like, I wish for once they could be like, look, I decided, I understand for you, and you think Kamu is good for your game. I don't think he's good for my game. He put me up. I am not going to set a precedent that somebody can just put me up, put no work in with me on a personal level, and then because they're on the block, I feel like there's an argument and there's a way to be like, Yosh, I want to work with you and I'm not coming after you, but I do not trust Kamu and I'm not going to vote for Kamu. And I think that they were so worried to do that and so like anxious that would mean that they were siding with the vets, that like they just didn't communicate that. And I'm like, it would have, whatever. But like so they were really, Mallory and Melody were really struggling with like getting Kamu out makes the most sense, and we don't want to upset the vets, but we also like don't want to burn this relationship with Taylor and Yosh. They were really struggling. Okay, they were really struggling in what the decision to make, to the point where I was like genuinely so stressed out, because I'm like, I don't even know what the hell is going to happen. But Angela winning is best case scenario, because now they have Angela's vote, and regardless, Drew and Barrett are going to vote Kamu out. So it would have been 5-4 if Melody and Mallory switched. So then they had a lot more plausible deniability. If it had been Haley or if it had been Kamu and Angela, it would have been a lot harder. The votes, like, you know, because then Haley votes. And Haley could have voted to keep, you know what I mean? So it worked out the best way for Mallory and Melody to not upset anybody because they were just like, hey, we don't have the votes, and nobody blamed them. So the votes were 8-1. Lala was the only one who was not informed. I think Mallory, it was either Mallory or Melody, but I think Mallory specifically told Taylor before the vote, like, we don't have the votes, we're voting Kamu out. So then Taylor was on the right side of the vote. Lala was the only one who didn't know what was going on, and she was really upset. But I'll get into the aftermath and stuff like that of all of that in week 7. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about in week 6? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm really happy that Kamu's gone. I don't think, like, the thing that, if it was like Yash, for example, like Yash was the one who was going home, I would understand the argument more of like, we're losing a strong competitor on our side, because Yash has been aligned with those people. Kamu literally was aligned with the Big Power Alliance, got people on their side out. Like, Lala's loyalty to Kamu and like devastation that Kamu was going home was confusing to me when Kamu was like against you. Like, did Kamu nominate Lala? Yeah, right? Yeah, Kamu nominated Lala and got Jason out, who Lala was close to, and was like horrible in the Tea Party to that side of the house. Like, the Pod Squad, the people who were like not in the big, strong alliance, were not working with Kamu. He was not an ally to them. He became an ally when he was going on the block because Lala was HOH. Like, and Yash's argument that like Kamu, because people kept being like, he betrayed his allies though. And Yash kept being like, he had good reason to. And I'm like, what was the good reason? What was the good reason that is not then a good enough reason for him to turn on you? He turned on Dee because she said something about him in the Bible. And like, do I care? Whatever. But like, he was not a good ally. And I'm not, again, because I don't care about people who play the game and like betray people and like switch when they need to switch. I think that's smart game move. I'm not criticizing it on like that shady gameplay or like whatever. That's not what I'm saying it. I'm saying that you can't say that Kamu is a loyal ally and he's a number for us and we can't get him out because he's a number for us and he's going to work in our favor, when for the beginning of the game he wasn't working in your favor, and he literally switched the first moment that somebody on your side had power, Lala. So like, do you genuinely think, I mean, maybe he would have nominated somebody from his old alliance because they turned on him, but then he turned on the people who were part of the group that was turned on. And again, I don't give a fuck because I don't like Haley or Chuck, but it's like, all these arguments of why Kamu is so important to keep on your side, to me, fell flat, okay? They fell flat, and I'm glad Kamu's gone, and we'll see how things progress. At this point, I'm riding hard for Mallory, Melody. I have such mixed feelings about Drew, because I think Drew had there was one thing I wanted to say, sorry, that I forgot. Drew had a cam talk this week, which was very interesting to me, because in the cam talk, he talked about how like he is more loyal to FAP than he is to the Icon. And I do believe that in his heart, he likes them more. And like, that is the group that he would ride to the end if he had a choice. I think what just gets me is he will like tell FAP, or he will tell the Icons things that FAP says, but then he's not like fully transparent with FAP. And the thing is, if it was working for him with the Icons, maybe I'd like, but like, and I guess there's nothing he can do, because he's literally giving them all the information and they still think he's sketchy. But I'm like, it's literally biting him in the ass, and he's like not being loyal, like, or not that he's disloyal, but he's like not being honest and transparent with Melody, even when she's like, tell me if you're in other alliances. And I'm like, just tell her you're in the other alliances. Your other alliances don't believe you anyway. But I'll get into it in week 7, because there's a lot to say about Drew and the mosh pit and the crossovers and all of that in week 7. So let me not jump ahead. I'm glad Kamu's gone. Thank God he's pre-jury. Never have to hear his voice again. What a loser. His little exit speech, flop. I'm so glad Kamu's gone. I'm so glad Kamu's gone. And I'll talk more in week 7. This episode should be out like Saturday, maybe Sunday morning, but it should be out Saturday, I think. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Sorry that I skipped a week. Hopefully this episode was enjoyable and makes up for the week that I skipped. If you enjoyed it, please follow me wherever you listen to podcasts, like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on YouTube, comment down below any thoughts you had about weeks 5 and 6, who you're rooting for, who you're rooting against. I have a lot of mixed emotions, but a lot of the emotions I have are about week 7, so I'll get to that next week. But at the end of week 6, I was just happy Kame was gone. So, and that Mallory and Melody were not entirely screwed over. Like, it was the best case scenario for them because they didn't really have to show their cards, you know, or like they kind of betrayed Yosh Taylor, but like not super intensely, and they didn't really betray their new alliance. Like, they're in an okay spot, and right now that's who I'm rooting for the most. So, anyways, I'll talk more next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode. You'll hear from me next week. What a season! What a season! I will say it's always, if there's one thing I really learned to like let myself do this season is not like get ahead of myself, because I always like things always change by the end of the week, where I'm like, I need to just let things play out because I'm always so stressed out about one case scenario and then the scenarios change. So like I'm not getting too ahead of myself until like everything's said and done. Okay. So I didn't think Angela was gonna win Blockbuster, and it happened. So anyways, you'll hear from me next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. Bye.